Coming to you from his studio in downtown San Francisco, this is the Backstage Bay Area podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Hey, welcome everyone. This is Backstage Bay Area. Thanks for joining us. Trio Grande is a modern jazz supergroup built around three musicians with three distinct musical histories and one shared obsession, interplay. The band brings together London-born saxophonist and keyboardist Will Vinson, Israeli guitarist Gilad Hekselman, and the genre-defying Nate Wood, best known to many listeners through Kneebody, who plays drums and bass simultaneously. The result is contemporary jazz with the punch of a much larger band, part modern trio, part groove experiment, part compositional conversation, and always rooted in improvisation. Will Vinson from the trio joins me now. Hey, Will, welcome to Backstage Bay Area.
Hi, nice to be with you. Thanks for that beautiful introduction.
Oh, thank you. Where am I reaching you today?
I am in Santa Cruz.
All right, beautiful Santa Cruz. You came at a good time. We got some great weather going.
Yeah, so I see. Out my window.
For listeners discovering Trio Grande for the first time, how did the trio come together, and what was the inspiration behind it all?
It was a sort of gradual coming together. I would have to say that it was kind of instigated by me in a way, in that for my whole life, since I was a teenager, I loved the Paul Motian trio with Joe Lovano and Bill Frisell, and I saw them a lot of times when I was growing up. And I always wanted to have a group like that where there was that much interplay, significantly like not a bass player, as much as I love bass players. The lack of that component in the band seemed to give them so much more freedom. And I just never found the right kind of pairing of musicians for that over the course of like, I don't know, we're talking like 20 years. And of course, my own life and career took me in different directions. But one night I went down to the Cornelius Street Cafe in New York City, which is sadly no longer with us. But Gilad, who you mentioned, Gilad Hekselman, guitarist, was playing trio with Antonio Sanchez and Becca Stevens, the great vocalist, and Antonio, the amazing drummer. So notably, no bass there. And I went down to check it out, and I sat in with them, and the gig was beautiful. And oddly enough, the very next day, stop me if the story's getting too long.
No, go on.
The very next day, Jerry Teakins, also no longer with us, from Crisscross Records, called me and asked me if I wanted to do a record. Now, at that time, I was working on a sort of like piano extravaganza record with a lot of great pianists, and I thought, well, if I do something, I would like it to be without piano. And so I just thought, well, hey, why don't I just call Antonio and Gilad and do a trio record? Sorry, Becca, I was taking Becca's place in that ensemble. And so we did that, and it became a Crisscross record called "It's All Right with Three." And then we started to talk about touring, and Antonio felt that the best way for it to work for him would be if it was a cooperative group, like as in not led by me. And so we made a record called Trio Grande, and then the pandemic hit, and then we came out the other side. Antonio was absolutely swamped with all these incredible projects that he had built up, and so we had to sort of look elsewhere. And the first thought in both my and Gilad's mind was Nate, because he's just a great drummer, regardless of anything else. But the fact that he can add this bass component, and then we've ended up with a band where, like, my original idea was no bass player, and we actually have a band where there are kind of three bass players, because Nate plays and I play bass synth, and Gilad also uses octave pedals to enable him to take the bass role too. So it's actually not a bassless trio anymore; it's a bass-full trio.
Yeah.
But that's how it's ended up, and we released a record a year or two ago, and we have another one coming out later this year.
All right, fantastic. For those that have never seen the group, can you talk about how Nate pulls off playing drums and playing the bass parts?
Well, I would love to explain that, but even though we've done, I don't know how many dozens or however many gigs we've done, it still blows my mind every time I see it. I mean, so occasionally we do workshops and masterclasses at schools around the world. And the first question that meets us is always, how do you play bass and drums at the same time? And Nate has a very pragmatic, very simple sounding answer. He says, well, as a drummer, you're already doing four things at the same time. So you just one of those with bass, and there you have it. It's like, oh, okay, so it's that simple.
Yeah.
No, it is incredible. So he's evolved the method. So he has a bass that's kind of designed to have the weight down one end, so that the neck of the bass doesn't weigh down on his hand while he's playing drums. He talks about Charlie Watts and Charlie Watts notably didn't play bass and drums at the same time, but he was talking about, beats that he would play that were essentially sort of one-handed beats. And he started to practice those and then play bass at the same time. And then he would just, use his innate kind of genius and wizardry to extend that technique that's available to him with one hand on the drums.
Sure.
So he can play bass as well. It's nuts. It doesn't make any sense.
I can't wait to see it. When you first started the trio, was there a sound you were chasing? And what did the trio do that the other projects didn't?
I tend not to want to chase a sound because the problem with, first of all, this is a cooperative group, so it's not my vision that is important. But also, even if it was, something I noticed early on in my life is that if you have a complete sound in your head, then the best case scenario when you get together with people is that they are going to realize that sound. And of course, that's a great thing. But for me, what's much more valuable than that is seeing what happens when, those people are unleashed to contribute whatever they are hearing and whatever they want, and then you end up with a sound that's way better and way more interesting than I could have imagined. So that's kind of what happens. Like Gilad and I write the music for the band, and we bring it in and we try to keep it as loose as possible, and we see where it goes. And it inevitably, it like always goes somewhere unexpected, like right away. And so it's really not. There isn't a sound that I'm chasing. It's a sound that evolves and appears out of these guys when they make contact with the music.
When you're arranging, how do you leave space for each other, especially with Nate playing drums and bass at the same time? How do you make that happen? What's the magic?
Well, I guess what we do, and Nate is really good at this, partly I think thanks to his background in different kinds of music. We begin with a piece of music that's usually like one or two pieces of paper long. It's very bare, sort of skeleton arrangement. And we take a sort of additive process rather than beginning with everything and then, trying to make sense of it. We have a melody, we probably have some harmony, and we maybe have an idea for a groove or something like that. And we begin with really basic stuff, may or may not be playing bass. I mean, like I said, Gilad and I are kind of filling that chair too. So there may be no bass, there may be just really simple kind of, just a sort of outline of a song, an arrangement. Sure. We try to play it in the simplest form. And then, adding stuff is really not a problem for these guys, because they can do anything, but they do so, and I try to do so in a way that's always, tasteful and actually add something rather than just crowding out the sound, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The arrangements are pretty, for want of a better word, organic. They come out of us being in a room and sort of hearing the music in its most basic form together at the same time, and then making additions where they make sense.
You sent over some music to share with our audience today. Let's go to the first track we're featuring today. It's called Ministry of Love. It's from Trio Grande's 2023 Whirlwind Recordings album, Urban Myth. Can you share the backstory for this song, and what should we be listening for in this track?
Oh, that's a good question, Steve. It's quite hard for me to look at my own music sort of objectively like that. But so, what we have in this song is so it opens with this very simple groove, sort of vamp. I didn't know at all what I wanted for that. This is a perfect example of us getting together in a room and me saying, hey, look, we're in 5 and it's A flat minor, have at it. and you basically, what you hear on that record, that's like the second or third time we'd ever played it. So it was not only different from the first time we played it, but also different from other takes that we did in the same session.
Okay.
Really just sort of coming together. And then I have this sort of melody that uses some of the compositional techniques that I was working on at the time. And then we have, if I'm not mistaken, I have to try to remember like who played what instrument on any tune, because we're all sort of chopping and changing. But Yeah, then you have a great guitar solo from Gilad with I think Nate playing bass and I'm playing keyboards, and then we have a sort of extended vamp for a saxophone solo, which then takes us through to the end, and there's a beautiful sort of drum vamp cadenza at the end. It's a pretty straightforward form, but it's quite a good little microcosm of everything that we do.
All right. Is there any significance in the title?
My titles are usually quite sort of ambiguous, and the title comes from the Orwell novel 1984.
Okay.
Where the Ministry of Love is kind of the torture division of the I don't want to get too heavy here, but of the totalitarian state. Hopefully, the music is a little lighter than that. I also kind of enjoy the ambiguity of titles, with knowing that people aren't necessarily going to know where it comes from, so they might, a little bit like music itself. Right? Not everybody knows what you would, even though it's a kind of language.
Sure.
The message of it isn't necessarily decoded by audiences in the same way that it's encoded by you. And I like to do that with titles too. So somebody who has read the book might make associations. Someone who hasn't might think Ministry of Love. Well, that sounds like a beautiful, or a weird concept. And adding abstract titles to abstract music, effectively.
All right. Well, let's check it out now. This is Ministry of Love by Trio Grande, and you're listening to Backstage Bay Area. That was Ministry of Love from Trio Grande's 2023 album Urban Myth, which is available now. I'm here with saxophonist and keyboardist Will Vinson from the group Trio Grande. Will, one of the most fascinating things about Trio Grande is how quickly the band can shift from something tightly composed into something that feels completely open and then back again. When you're building a set, how do you think about pacing and how do you keep the music feeling unpredictable without losing the thread?
Oh, what a great question. You have some really good questions, Steve. So when we're building a set, we tend to think pretty sort of broadly about the kinds of things that anyone does when they're building a set. Like, you want to start with something that, gets attention somehow, which may not always be in the traditional or the most obvious way of like playing something really hard hitting. One way to get attention, to draw the listener in, is to sort of make them have to try,
Mm-hmm.
So you do something much more sort of abstract or even start with a ballad, just to sort of set the tone.
Sure.
And then you kind of balance those things with tunes that are just on the simplest level imaginable, loud versus soft, slow versus fast, that kind of thing, different grooves. But beyond that, we try to mix it up a little bit in order to sort of provoke ourselves into moving the music into different directions. Because at different part of a set, you kind of want to deliver a different thing to the audience, right? And if you keep the set the same, which we do sometimes, but then you're sort of always trying to deliver the same thing with the same tune.
Right.
Whereas if you change it up, you can draw different things out of your own music, which is a really good thing to be able to do, because the last thing you want to do when you're playing is just kind of feeling like you're going through the motions.
Sure.
And the thing is that the lineup of this band and the musicianship of these guys leads to a kind of flexibility where we really can, there's a certain level of arrangement that has to come with the fact that we've got these different instruments and stuff, but we can, dramatically, radically alter the vibe of a tune at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that happens depending on how the set is feeling, how we feel about how we feel that the audience is feeling, how we're feeling about what we want to deliver. So it can take many forms.
Right. Are there cues you guys have developed over time that help you steer these transitions?
Yeah, I mean,
other than, I guess, eye contact, or is that?
Yeah, sure. But like, musically, I mean, sometimes Gilad will just, if the music breaks down into a kind of sort of free moment or a fermato or something, one of us can begin playing just at a totally different tempo.
Okay.
Or something like that. That's something that's happened. It's not part of our set sort of menu of things that we choose. It's like we do like to take each other by surprise sometimes by doing that kind of thing. Sometimes we'll play a vamp, and Gilad or Nate will just radically alter the tempo or the feel or the density of the of the thing, and then that sort of, it almost kind of wipes the slate clean for us to decide what we're going to do next, which may mean just finding our way back to the original thing, or it might mean altering the entire tune.
It's fun to watch the machinery work.
Yeah, it can be hair raising.
Yeah.
To be in the middle of it, but it's always fun. And the thing that with these guys, you kind of know that like everything, whatever happens, like whatever somebody decides to do, music is going to be made out of it.
Right.
And we don't have to worry about that.
Well, the second piece we're going to feature today is a song called The Past. That's the first single from the new record. Before we hear it, what can you tell us about the new record and what it signals about the next chapter of Trio Grande?
Well, what it signals is almost sort of not really for me to say yet. I mean, in terms of, where we haven't taken the music from the new record on the road yet. And it's in doing that we kind of discover where we're going with it,
Okay.
I mean, I love making a new record. I love recording. I love the process of post-production and all of that stuff. But once you've then taken the music on the road for, a certain number of tours, it takes on a different identity, which is often not really the same as the record. But the record is a snapshot in time, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Again, this is the record is called What's Left. It's going to be out on La Reserve in June. I think we have a single coming out this month, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Which I think is what you're going to play.
Yeah.
Again, it's compositions of mine and Gilad's, and like the other two records, it also contains a pop cover. The first record, we played "Jealous Guy" by John Lennon.
Right.
The second record, we played a song by a sort of 80s synth pop guy called Nick Kershaw, called "Dancing Girls." And on this record, we play "Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime." That was kind of made famous more recently by Beck, but it's actually from a 80s band called the Corgis. Anyway, but the rest of the music is composed or arranged by me and Gilad. We play a Wayne Shorter tune entitled "Blues a la carte," which I arranged, and then it's music that Gilad and I wrote for the band, and we don't really know what the other is working on, until right before we get in the studio and we bring the music to each other and we think, okay, so how can we take this repertoire and turn it into a complete album that contains multiple facets? And I guess it's up to the listener to determine how successful we are in that. Okay. But it's always a great process.
Well, let's get a sneak peek into the upcoming album coming out in June. This is the new single coming out this month. It's called "The Past." It's by Trio Grande. And when we come back, we'll talk about their upcoming shows at SF Jazz. You're listening to Backstage Bay Area. We just heard Past, the first single from Trio Grande's new record coming out this June. I'm here with Will Vinson. Will, you're coming to SF Jazz and the Joe Henderson Lab, which is an intimate space and a great setting for this kind of high-level interaction. When Trio Grande plays in a space like that, what can the audience look forward to?
Well, Steve, I've actually never played at the Joe Henderson Lab before, so
Okay.
I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be like. Your listeners probably know better than I do.
Okay.
Last time I played at SF Jazz was, I think, at least 10 years ago, but it wasn't in space. But if it's anything like the other shows that we play, you can look forward to a lot of energy. You can look forward to witnessing, the only person on the planet who can play bass and drums at the same time, and you'll see a lot of interplay in the way that we mix up our roles, particularly the bass role.
Yeah.
I think you'll hear us actually kind of letting loose on some of the new music, although we'll also be playing the music from the last album, and you're basically going to see three guys like having a good time and making music together in an intimate space, which is really, it is the best. You described it as intimate, so that makes me happy because that really is like the best environment for us to like play together and also bring the audience in a way that, we really feel like they're part of the process.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, just give a little clue to you and to our listeners who've never been to the Joe Henderson Lab. It's nothing like any other jazz club setting, club type atmosphere that you've ever been to. There's 100 seats. The acoustics are perfect. Stage lighting is great. But what makes it unique is that two sides of the room are glass from floor to ceiling. There's some artwork on the glass, but you get the sense of being in a busy urban city. There's a one-way street. Sometimes the lights enter the room of like a passing fire truck or an ambulance. You can't hear them, but it's almost like a light show and the whole room illuminates. And you get that urban feel of city jazz along with what's going on stage. Plus, too, there's street pedestrians walking by who stop and stare and say, what's going on in here, So you've got that kind of outside energy vibe with the inside presence on stage of a 1 hour set by great musicians like Trio Grande.
Fantastic. It's going to be a good night.
We've got two sets coming up. We'll talk about that one second. Just my last question for you. Is there anything about this tour that you're on right now that feels different from the Urban Myth Run?
I think this technically is the Urban Myth Run because, the new record isn't out yet.
Okay.
This is actually if you can believe this, like since the last record came out in 2023, this is our first US tour. I'm really excited about that because we're mostly touring in Europe. We were also in Australia. It's quite odd to have made it to Australia before we toured in the US. We've done, some one-offs on the East Coast, but this is the first time. This is actually the first time that I've played on the West Coast since COVID. So I'm extra excited about that. And of course, we'll be playing at the Joe Henderson Lab where I haven't been before. It's going to be really cool to bring this music to an audience that hasn't heard it before. I mean, there's no way pretty much that, anybody in the audience will have seen this band. That's always a real thrill to kind of make contact with a new audience for the first time.
Sounds like a great night of music. Hope our listeners go to both shows. And let me remind our listeners that Trio Grande is making their stage debut at SF Jazz's Joe Henderson Lab on Wednesday, February 11th with two shows, 7 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Get tickets for both because you guys mix it up. Tickets and full details are available right now at sfjazz.org. We'll include a direct link to get those tickets on our podcast show notes. And for more information and tour dates, please visit the band's official website and social media. There'll be links for those in the podcast show notes. Will, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, and I'm looking forward to hearing Trio Grande live at SF Jazz.
Thank you so much, Steve.
This is Backstage Bay Area, and we'll be right back.
Are you a jazz musician preparing for a run in San Francisco? The Backstage Bay Area podcast wants to help tell your story. We are currently filling our guest lineup with the artists keeping the jazz scene alive. If you have dates booked at a local club or concert hall, let's get you on the mic to discuss your latest work. Connect with us directly. send an email to backstage.sfbay@gmail.com. Just let us know when you'll be playing in San Francisco. That's backstage.sfbay@gmail.com.
Backstage Bay Area is dedicated to keeping jazz alive in the 415 by spotlighting the artists, presenters, and venues that sustain this music. The most meaningful way to support local jazz is simple. Show up, buy a ticket, and experience the music live. Visit BackstageBayArea.com and explore our upcoming concerts section, featuring both a weekly guide and a weekend guide to jazz shows across the region, plus the latest concert news. Thank you for keeping jazz alive in the 415.
You've been listening to the Backstage Bay Area podcast. Visit us on the web at BackstageBayArea.com. And don't forget to keep jazz alive in the 415.